and one question for the panel. And the observation concerns all of our preoccupation with time. It's very striking that time is the one thing that most of the minorities that are represented here in Turkey do not have. There's a particular urgency associated with the condition, which is in some cases nearing extinction for some of these minorities. So given the urgency of time and the fact that the endogenous factors inside Turkey, in particular the political class, does not seem inclined to follow the kind of advice and candid discussion that the intellectual and civil society advocates here have shared with us today. What would all of you as the operational panel begin to suggest in terms of reaching out outside of Turkey for forms of leverage that can encourage change within? And I'm thinking of an article that Orhan Kemal Cengiz wrote, I think it was 3 years ago now, called Waiting for Godot. And in that article in Zaman, he encouraged, our lunch speaker, he encouraged the ecumenical patriarchy to reach out to the European Court, to utilize the European Court of Human Rights in order to try to bring remedies to these situations. Rather than presenting things in a zero-sum way, I do ask you, however, to consider whether or not it's possible to find a judicious mix of resort to external institutions that can then dialogue or engage with Turkey to bring about the kinds of internal change that we discuss repeatedly but are not really seeing occur. Do you have any specific suggestions?
Well, it's always going to be a challenge to engage whether the U.S. or the European governments on this issue because they have so many issues with Turkey. The U.S. very heavily on security issues, European Union on a number of others. So I think it'd be useful as part of a dialogue. I don't think you're going to see extraordinary pressure come from official entities. It might be useful if churches that are interested in this issue could try to encourage their members, who may be business people, who may be potential tourists, anyone with any kind of contacts with Turkey, to bring this up on a consistent basis. So influential Turkish citizens, whether in business or in other, culturally, sports, and others would hear this as a matter of concern. So it is not seen as just something of Turkish minorities, but rather seen as something that engages people well beyond Turkey and well beyond the political process. And I think to emphasize the positive, which is if Turkey wants to play a lead role, if Turkey wants to be a significant power in the region, if Turkey wants an international leadership role, if Turkey wants greater business across the world to be a bridge between East and West, these issues matter. And that Turkey wants leadership, this is an area to exercise leadership, and it's not reciprocity, it's not a question of what Greece is doing in Western Thrace or something. This is an issue of what Turkey is, the values that Turkey embodies, how it treats the people within its society that are most vulnerable. And the larger the community that voices that, the louder the voice, I think that would be helpful.
Thank you. And just to emphasize a point that you made, Turkey is the 16th largest economy in the world, 16th or 17th, depending on who's counting. But it's an enormous economy. The country is enormous in terms of its geography. Its geopolitical importance is indisputable, and I think the political class in Turkey is well aware of that. So your counsel that this should be dialogical rather than pressure, I think, is one that would potentially resonate. But more solutions?
It's so daunting that it's hard to speak of something that rises to the level of a solution. But one of the things I've been intrigued by lately, I don't know how to effectively make this work, is this picking up on the notion of paying attention to the business sector. That is, there's a tendency to focus on human rights, on political institutions, on various kinds of dialogue, but in some ways, the business sector may be one of the largest areas of interaction. And I've been conscious over the last couple of years of the UN Global Compact, the number of major corporations that have signed on to be committed to human rights instruments. I admit being somewhat skeptical of this. It looks like a lot of PR to me. But human rights, in many ways, has been fundamentally PR. Human rights instruments do not work because there's some great court in the sky that you can go to, but still you have to get things enforced. But public opinion makes a difference, and if we can work through the corporate sector as well as other sectors to apply pressure and to say, look, this is really going to make things better for your country, make things better for our employees, make things better for the general situation, and to have the number of voices multiplied and coming from some other areas than the traditional channels may be helpful.
Yeah, I would think that it's not really a question of just international support. I think we have to have a combination of a number of players. The international community has a role to play, but we also have to strengthen the civil society within Turkey. There's a major role to play. The business sector, which has been mentioned. I think whenever you're trying to promote change, you have to realize that there are people who have interest in the status quo. And they're not going to just give up that way. So that's why you need to mobilize and see how you can actually transform the situation. And I think that's one of the challenges that we are, and one looks at the fact that Turkey right now is considering a new constitution. Now, I mean, there is an opportunity, and yet they're also really dangerous, that unless the process is right, I mean, you're not going to get a constitution that is responsive to the needs of people. Because the elites are not going on their own to develop a constitution that actually reduces their power. It has to be something that many sectors are engaged in order to produce, and they have to be ownership of the process by the ordinary people.